I watched all 5 Transformers movies, but I waited too long to write my script, so I had to watch all of them over again. So I ended up watching a total of 25 hours worth of Transformers movies. I'm surprised I'm still alive, and I need someone to tell me I was brave, because watching 25 hours worth of Transformers is an insane thing to do, and that's twice as much Shia LaBeouf and Marky Mark that anyone should ever consume. But the new Transformers 1 animated movie with Chris Hemsworth and Tyrese Henry marks the 40-year anniversary of this long-running franchise, spanning across highly successful toy lines, TV shows, a very well-loved animated movie from 1986, 2 live-action unconnected movies, and last but not least, the 5 Michael Bay movie franchise. Starting in 2007 and ending a decade later in 2017, Mr. Bay brought some new life into the franchise with mixed reviews and opinions on his depiction of this beloved property. So I figured in the spirit of the new movie coming out and my love for self-torture, we would take a look at this very mixed bag of garbage. Brace yourself for things like characters disappearing from movie to movie that we never see again or hear about, plot devices being changed to fit the new storyline, creating the most confusing continuity I have ever seen, plus the Transformers being switched out like a used car lot. Seriously, car pun aside, we get very little time with any of the Transformers. Also, these movies will give you whiplash because their plots end up being all over the place. This is only made worse by the terrible pacing, so I'll do my best to explain the plot, but you've been warned. Alright, with all of that, let's get into it. The first Transformers opens with a narration through space. We are told that before time, there was a thing called the Cube, and it has the power to create worlds and fill them with life. It's how the Transformers were born, and greed over the Cube caused a war on their home planet of Cybertron that ended up wiping most of them out. Megatron, the big bad leader of the evil Transformers, aka the Decepticons, went to Earth looking for the Cube. He must not be a great pilot since he missed the mark a little bit and ended up getting frozen in the Arctic instead. After this intro and backstory, we are introduced to our military squad of characters led by Josh Duhamel's Lennox and Tyrese Gibson's Epps. They're on a military base when a Decepticon helicopter named Blackout starts blowing the place up. Blackout starts downloading some encrypted files before the military guys are able to stop his hacking. Even though most of the base is obliterated, Epps is able to snap a photo of Blackout before escaping with Lennox and a small team. Blackout doesn't like having his photo taken, so he sends a robot Scorpion after them to get back the photo. Then we are introduced to Sam Witwicky, played by Shia LaBeouf, who, fun fact, has the same birthday as me. It's not really that fun, and neither is Sam, as he gives a genealogy report about his great-great-grandfather, Archibald Witwicky. One thing all these movies do is dump a lot of lore and exposition on you all at once, and it just slows the whole story down. So to quickly explain the lore we need to know, it turns out that Archie Boy found Megatron in the ice and then got his glasses zapped with these weird symbols. The weird symbols are actually the coordinates to the cube, and Sam just so happens to have them in his possession. Bing bang boom, you have an unnecessary human character in a movie that could have been just about transforming robots fighting. So since Sam got a passing grade, that means his dad is going to buy him a car. Bernie Mac makes an incredible appearance as Uncle Bobby B, the used car salesman. He delivers one of the very few lines in this movie that made me laugh when he yells this at his mom.
Hey, mammy! Oh, don't be like that. If I had a rock, I'll bust your head, bitch. Say, man, she deaf, you know?
Bumblebee's in disguise on the car lot and decides to blow out every other car's window to make sure that Sam buys him. After that, we get introduced to another side plot, but since it's not only the most boring one, but has very little to do with the main plot until the end, I'm mostly going to skip over it and then summarize it all when it's important. Sam drives his new car to a lake, and his friend just randomly decides to climb a tree. He ends up taking Michaela home, who is the love interest played by Megan Fox. In unfortunate Michael Bay fashion, all the women in this franchise are overly sexualized, and typically pretty young too. Actually, you'll start to see a very weird and very creepy decline in the age of women as the franchise goes on. At the same time, a little Decepticon is aboard Air Force One, and we get a weird George W. Bush moment.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yeah, can you wrangle me up some ding-dongs, darling?
Little robot guy hacks Air Force One in order to finish what Blackout started back at the military base, and it points them to Sam. Air Force One makes an emergency landing, and the little robot escapes in the police car Decepticon named Barricade. Then Sam thinks his car is getting stolen in the middle of the night, and he chases it to a junkyard where he sees Bumblebee in robot form. The cops show up and just immediately arrest Sam and then interrogate him about being on drugs. We then abruptly cut back to the military squad for what I think is one of the best action bits in the movie. Lennox, Epps, and the rest of the squad have been getting chased by this scorpion thing while they head to a nearby village. It attacks them in almost a horror creature fashion. It freaking shish kebabs this one guy. This is also where one of the iconic shots of this movie comes from, as the soldiers run away in slow motion while the scorpion lunges up behind them. Maybe it's the Marine Corps in me or my dumb tiny brain, but this whole battle in the village while the scorpion attacks is just so good. Plus, it even has a weird comedic bit about needing a credit card in order to call the military from the village's cell phone. And I still, to this day, love this moment between Epps and Lennox.
Hey, what you want? Pocket! Quick pocket! My black pocket! You got 10 back pocket! Left cheek! Left cheek! Left cheek!
The whole fight ends when air support finally arrives and the robot escapes, leaving a piece of its tail behind. I do appreciate how Bay cast a lot of military veterans both in front of and behind the cameras, and it adds a nice touch to all the action scenes that involve the US military. After that, we are introduced to another character played by Anthony Anderson, who is kind of funny, but unfortunately, he plays very little part in the plot, and we never see him again after this movie. He's also a part of that subplot I'm not really going to mention, and everybody involved in that feels extremely underutilized. Sam runs into Barricade before Bumblebee shows up to save the day. Bee and Barricade fight, mostly off-screen, before Bee emerges victorious and takes Michaela and Sam to meet the other Autobots. We then meet Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots, as he introduces us to our cast of forgettable Transformers. There's Jazz, Ironhide, Ratchet, and that's it. That's all of them. There are 5 Transformers, and none of them besides Bee or Optimus get any personality or screen time. Oh well, who cares about Transformers in a Transformers movie anyways? After meeting the rest of the Autobots, Optimus asks Sam where the glasses are, which leads them to Sam's house. This all leads to an overly long scene of Sam trying to get the glasses while the Transformers stomp around like little kids. For no reason at all, they just start knocking things over and messing up the lawn for 8 whole minutes straight. No wonder these fucking movies are 2.5 hours each. John Turturro shows up as Special Agent Simmons of Sector 7, and they think Sam has had contact with the newly discovered aliens. Simmons arrests everyone, and in the middle of their transport, he tells Sam that Michaela's a criminal with a juvie record for stealing cars. He also has this really weird line to Michaela right after calling her a criminal, and keep in mind, she's playing a 16 or 17-year-old in this movie.
She's got her own juvie record to prove it. She's a criminal. Criminals are hot.
You need to leave!
The Autobots show up to put an end to the weirdness between Simmons and Michaela and replace it with Bumblebee peeing on Simmons. Reinforcements from the humans show up, and what happens next showcases some of the worst writing in history. Optimus Prime, who is supposed to be super smart and can transform into a truck, that part is very important because he proceeds to run away from a helicopter. So the super smart leader of the Autobots, who can turn into a truck that can drive faster than he can run, proceeds to run on 2 legs from a helicopter. And in the end, not only do Sam and Michaela get recaptured, but now Bumblebee also gets captured. Why does this movie take so long to do anything fun or exciting? I missed the Robo-Scorpion. That was fun. This is boring.
Step it up, find something new. You're boring.
Okay, so remember that side plot I mentioned? Well, it's finally important because the Secretary of Defense rounds up all our lovely heroes and gathers them at the Hoover Dam. Basically, that whole side plot is about an analyst named Maggie who teams up with Anthony Anderson in order to crack this weird message they got. But they get arrested and then just eat some donuts. And then decoding the message ends up getting them on the team with the Secretary of Defense. Side plot explained. It also turns out that the Hoover Dam was built around the cube in order to hide its energy source. So does that mean the cube was just sitting in the open in the middle of the Colorado River for thousands of years? It also turns out that Megatron is chillin', pun intended, in the Hoover Dam in cryostasis. I also love this moment between Lennox and Simmons when Simmons refuses to release B back to Sam.
I'm ordering you under S7 executive jurisdiction.
S7 don't exist.
Wait, we don't take orders from people that don't exist.
I'm gonna count to 5.
I'm gonna count to 3.
That's actually a good line, but the Decepticons attack the dam, which causes the cryostasis of Megatron to fail, allowing him to escape. B gets released and shrinks down the cube so the humans can drive away from the dam to draw the evil guys out. All the other side characters have their own little battle with the tiny robot, and there's a Bad Boy style shot during the fight. Michael Bay giving a little nod to Michael Bay. Very classy. Our main heroes and military peeps run into the Autobots and then head into a nearby city. Optimus Prime decapitates a Decepticon named Bone Crusher on the way before the final battle kicks off. And the final battle is pretty well done in my opinion. You have Bumblebee getting his legs blown off trying to save the humans from a rocket, Evil Jet Starscream taking down other jets in a sneak attack, Megatron chasing Sam, which would be terrifying. Imagine having this face chasing after you. And a pretty cool moment where Lennox slides a bike under Blackout and blows him up with the help of Bumblebee, who is now on the back of a tow truck. Also, Megatron kills Jazz. Not Jazz. He was so... Which one was he again? In the end, it's Sam who kills Megatron when he shoves the cube into his chest, and it gives him such bad heartburn, he takes a dip at the bottom of the ocean. And yeah, the movie ends with Linkin Park playing over Sam and Michaela making out before the credits roll. For the first live-action adaptation of Transformers, I think this movie does a few things right and a few things wrong. Weirdly enough, my favorite inclusion across the first 3 movies is the military subplots. Lennox and Epps have the best action scenes, and given that none of these Transformer movies have nearly enough Autobot vs. Decepticon action, it's all we really have. Plus, the relationship between Lennox, Epps, and the Transformers grows pretty naturally through the first 3 movies and easily has the best moments. The military group is way more fun and interesting, which sucks because we spend a majority of the time with Sam, who is the weakest part of this movie. There are a few comedic moments that made me laugh. I especially like the arm joke when Sam is taking Michaela home.
Like, I just put in that light there, and that disco ball. So the light reflects off the disco ball.
Or when the Autobots crash to Earth and this one kid running with a video camera says this.
Explosions everywhere! This is easily 100 times cooler than Armageddon! I swear to God!
Though a lot of the humor doesn't land, I will say that for 2007, the effects and CGI aren't that bad. I think the technology wasn't fully there, which is why we don't see a lot of Transformers battle on screen in this, but it aged fairly decent. Also, the use of practical effects in this first one blew me away a little bit. Not because they were mind-blowingly good, but because I didn't think they would build them. A lot of the explosions and destruction are all practical, and even a couple of shots of the Transformers themselves are real models they built. When Bone Crusher fights Optimus in the 3rd act, they actually blew a bus in half when he is seen crashing through it. It's pretty clear to me that a lot more attention and care went into this one, which is kind of crazy because that definitely declines as the movies move forward. The biggest downfall of this movie and the rest in the series is the human element. A majority of these characters are introduced, one thing happens to them, they contribute a very small amount to the final act, and then disappear from the franchise forever. To some extent, I understand having these plot lines so the Autobots can work with the humans and everyone can feel warm and fuzzy about beating the bad guys. But a majority of the side plots in the first one are concluded off screen. In the 3rd act, the side characters we got all introduced to call in the Air Force, battle with the small robot for 1 minute, and then you never see them again. It's annoying and highlights the shitty writing that plagues this whole franchise. I also think Megan Fox is a way better actress in this movie than people give her credit for. Personally, I think Michaela is more of a main character than Sam, and her departure from the franchise is kind of a bummer in my opinion. Sam isn't a bad character, but he's also not an interesting character either. In the final battle, Sam's only job is to carry the cube to a helicopter to get it away from Megatron, but literally anyone could have done that. Michaela, on the other hand, is the one that comes up with the idea to save Bumblebee, and they actually make a difference by helping Linux blow up Blackout. I think the first one might be the best across all 5, but we still got a long way ahead of us, so strap in. It's gonna be a rough one. Revenge of the Fallen opens with more Optimus Prime narration as we learn that Transformers have been on our planet since 17,000 BC. This is where we will start to see this franchise completely ignore previous information, plot devices, and characters. Turns out there's an Energon source on Earth, and that's actually why all the robots keep coming here. So ignore the cube from the last one and why Megatron was here in the first place, because in this one, it turns out he was working for someone else that wants the Energon source, and the cube was more of a side quest. After this opening narration, we are introduced to our new Special Forces team, NEST. Non-biological extraterrestrial species treaty, and they're hunting Decepticons. They're in China fighting this giant wheeled robot with the Autobots, and after they take it down, it leaves them with a cryptic message. It says that the Fallen will rise again. Again, the plot focuses a little too much on the humans and not nearly enough on the giant transforming robots or the Fallen revenge storyline, but oh well. And speaking of human plots, we spend the next chunk following Sam as he prepares to leave for college, so we're just gonna skip through this. Why the fuck did they include humping dogs? Because this is one of 3 scenes where they do it. Now, the important thing to know from this opening is that a piece of the cube was stuck in Sam's shirt that he wore at the end of the last movie. Not only does it send crazy images into Sam's brain, but it also turns the home appliances into little demon Decepticons. Sam yells for Bee to help, and even though Bumblebee saves them, Sam still yells at him for causing damage. Honestly, Sam kinda sucks as a character, and he only gets worse from this point on. The NEST team returns to their base after their vacation in China, only to find Galloway, an NSA agent, there to meet him. Galloway believes that the Autobots are the reason the Decepticons keep coming to Earth, and that if they left Earth, everything would go back to normal. Optimus tells him that they will happily leave, but not before dropping this line.
What if we leave? And you're wrong. We've got a badass over here.
Sometimes these movies surprisingly have good lines. Back at college, Sam meets his new roommate Leo, who believes the Transformers are real despite the government trying to cover it up. We then get a sudden cut to the Decepticons, who are looking for the cube shard and want to bring Megatron back to life. So this robot cat breaks into the top secret super secure military bunker and steals the shard they were keeping. Going back to the college storyline once again, Sam ends up at a frat party, Bee shows up and takes Sam away from the party to meet Optimus Prime at a graveyard. And instead of telling Sam that they need him because he's seeing crazy Transformer images, he just vaguely says that they need his help. Sam then declines for some reason, even though all last movie he just wanted to be a hero, and just walks away. Then a bunch of Decepticons dive down and revive Megatron, and then Megatron just flies back to Cybertron to visit his old pal, the Fallen. The Fallen tells Megatron that the location to the Energon source they're looking for is now inside Sam's head, and they can extract it. It also turns out that only a Prime can defeat the Fallen, so Megatron agrees to kill Optimus and capture Sam to extract the location of the Energon source from his noggin. This leads us to a plot point and scene that I still, to this day, do not understand why anyone would include. Throughout Sam's college scenes, there's been this random woman who keeps trying to sexually assault Sam and convince him to cheat on Michaela. So after Sam asks Michaela to fly out with the shard from his shirt, the woman shows up again in Sam's dorm room. Only, when Michaela arrives and opens the door, she catches them kissing. Here's the weird part. She's a fucking robot. She's a Decepticon in disguise, and instead of using all the other opportunities it had to kill Sam, it kept up this ruse of being a human woman for days in order to make out with Sam? It's shown that she was going to attack him during the makeout, but why do you need to make out with him to do this? You were literally in a car with him one-on-one. You could have easily attacked him. You could have attacked him at any other point. Why do you need to make out with him? Why do you need to include this? I hate this. I hate this so much. It only exists so there can be some tension on Michaela and Sam's relationship, but this is the worst way possible to try and accomplish that. In the end, Michaela ends up killing her, and then Blackout, the helicopter from the first movie that I'm pretty sure exploded and died, but he captures their car and delivers Sam, Michaela, and Leo to Megatron. Oh yeah, Leo is kind of just there for this movie. He doesn't do much, doesn't get a big action scene, and like the characters from the first movie, he too disappears after this to never be seen again. Luckily, this is where the movie starts to be a little more interesting when Megatron sends a creepy bug into Sam's brain to get the images he's been seeing. Before any serious damage can be done to Sam, Optimus and Bumblebee show up to rescue them all. What follows is a 3 versus 1 fight of Optimus taking on Megatron, Starscream, and Blackout. I guess Michael Bay heard my complaint from the first one because we actually get extended Transformer fighting scenes in Revenge of the Fallen. Optimus even rips Blackout's head in two. He's definitely dead now.
Stop! He's already dead.
Megatron is finally able to kill Optimus, and with the last Prime defeated, the Fallen sends all the Decepticons down to Earth to start his takeover. The Fallen also puts out a news broadcast to the world telling them to hand over Sam or else, which now makes Sam a fugitive. At the same time, Galloway is granted control over Nest and orders them to return to their HQ and do nothing, as the military is going to handle this how they always do, otherwise known as shooting a bunch of nukes all willy-nilly. Luckily, the humans aren't complete idiots, and Sam is able to get a lead that could help him understand these symbols in his head. This leads to the only returning character we know and maybe love. John Turturro as Agent Simmons comes back, but since Sector 7 was disbanded at the end of the first movie, he is now an internet conspiracy theorist who works in a butcher shop. Using his knowledge and stolen files from the government, they ask the leg-humping robot Michaela captured for answers. I didn't even mention it because outside of this one and only time, this little robot plays zero role in the story. The little robot shows a map of all the older Decepticons who are on Earth, which takes our ragtag team of Simmons, Leo, Michaela, and Sam to the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Using the piece of the cube Michaela still has, they are able to wake up Jetfire, an old Blackbird plane who has lost his mind.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
If they had the cube and it can wake up Jetfire, and earlier the Decepticons used a piece of the cube to revive Megatron, couldn't you just use the piece of the cube you have to revive Optimus? Am I overthinking this? I'm probably overthinking this. Jetfire ends up teleporting everyone to the middle of the Egyptian desert in order to find another MacGuffin called the Matrix of Leadership, which is also the Energon source everyone is looking for. While on their new quest, Simmons calls Lennox to have him and his Nest team bring Optimus Prime's body to the desert so they can try to revive him with the Matrix of Leadership. Personally, I find the scenes with the military guys the funniest part of this movie because while on their plane to the desert, they have to get rid of Galloway. So they fake an emergency and strap a parachute to this man, and Lennox has this beautiful exchange before he departs.
I want you to pull the boat. I need you to pull it really hard. Not now. We're on the plane, you dumbass.
Josh Duhamel is way funnier than people give him credit for, and I love his performance as Lennox. It is hands down my favorite character in this entire franchise. So the next morning, Sam and the group discover the Matrix of Leadership just as the military guys drop in with Optimus's body. Unfortunately for Sam, when he goes to pick the Matrix up, it turns to dust, but instead of giving up, he puts all the dust in his sock. While trying to link up with Lennox, Sam and his team are attacked by Starscream, so they come up with a plan and split up. Simmons and Leo will leave in the cars to try to draw a Starscream, while Sam and Michaela will run to Optimus's body and try to bring him back to life. Simmons runs straight into a construction yard, and unfortunately for him, Devastator assembles, which is a giant construction-sucking robot. Unfortunately for us, he also has testicles for some strange reason. What the fuck, man? Just like, what the fuck? Being the champ that he is, Simmons climbs up the pyramids and calls in a railgun strike on Devastator, blowing him to pieces. And that's pretty much all Simmons does for this entire third act. Jetfire shows back up to save the humans from a Decepticon, and then the robot Scorpion from the first movie shows up before Jetfire then squashes it. Again, maybe it's my tiny brain, but the next scene made me laugh out loud. Epps and Lennox call in a massive airstrike and use smoke to mark the target, and I just love Tyrese Gibson and Josh Duhamel's exchange.
I hope these F-16s got good aim.
Yeah, why is that?
I told them to hit the orange smoke.
You mean that orange smoke?
It wasn't my best toss, okay?
Fun fact about this airstrike, it went into the Guinness Book of World Records for being the largest on-screen explosion with actors present. While running from the giant explosion, Sam veers off and gets shot by Megatron. He goes to Autobot heaven? What the fuck? And it's either Michaela saying she loves him or the fact that the Primes give him the real matrix of leadership, but he comes back to life. Sam brings Optimus back to life, who gets an upgrade from Jetfire before going after Megatron in the Fallen. Optimus blows a piece of Megatron's head off by using Megatron's own gun against him, then he just tears the Fallen's face off. Starscream and an injured Megatron skedaddle so they can come back in the next movie after they saw Optimus go all crazy on the Fallen. Oh, and then Leo just kind of shows back up at the end because he didn't help Simmons at all when Devastator started to attack. And that's pretty much the second Transformers movie. We also never see Megan Fox again after this, as she made a comment about Michael Bay being like a certain dictator on set. This angered Steven Spielberg, one of the producers, who is also a Jewish man. He told Michael Bay that he should fire her. Now, Megan Fox says that she left on her own terms, but we haven't really seen her in a lot of big box office movies, and Steven Spielberg is a man who has a lot of pull in Hollywood. I also find it hilarious how there's a sequence that looks like a military recruiting commercial. Which of these clips is from Michael Bay's 2009 Revenge of the Fallen, and which is footage from a Marine Corps commercial I found online? At least in this one we get some extended scenes of robots fighting on screen, and it's highlighted in the 1v3 fight Optimus has. Though I will never understand why Michael Bay included an evil robot disguised as a woman to make out with Sam before killing him. It's so unnecessary, and I already ranted enough about it, but god damn, it's just so bad. I also don't think Michael Bay fully understands how to write villains. Megatron shows up in each of these movies, but he's always a B villain and working for someone else. The main villains don't ever do anything until the final act, and then Optimus just comes in and easily disposes of them to save the day every single time. And to further my point, there's a small subplot about Sam's parents getting kidnapped by the Decepticons. Don't worry, you didn't miss anything. It's just so incredibly stupid that I didn't really want to mention it until now. And the trap just ends up being the Decepticons releasing Sam's parents in front of him, and then they just hold Sam and his parents at gunpoint. And they hold them at gunpoint long enough for B to swoop in and save everyone. Why did they hold the humans they wanted dead at gunpoint? They no longer need Sam alive, and even say that earlier in the movie. It's stupid and lazy. Thank God for Lennox and Epps having an interesting side plot, and easily the funniest moment when they get Galloway off the plane. Honestly, I don't have much to say about this second one. It's bad, and I can see why some people call it the worst one. Personally though, I think the next one is the worst out of the initial trilogy. Dark of the Moon opens with more narration from Optimus Prime. I'm sensing a pattern here. It turns out there's more to the final days of the war on Cybertron than we believed, and Optimus has been keeping a little bit of a secret. There was an Autobot ship that was fleeing the planet, but before it could, it was shot down, and on board this ship was the key to winning the war for the Autobots. That ship crash landed on Earth's moon in 1961, and the original space race was around getting to that ship first. We then catch up with Sam, who apparently can't get a job and is living with his new girlfriend, Carly, played by Rosie Huntington. I find it very hard to believe that Sam, who graduated from an Ivy League school, got a medal from the president, has connections with high-ranking military officers and government officials, yet he can't get a job? The Autobots now help solve human conflicts, which involves killing humans. The one thing Optimus said not to do in the last two movies. Cool. Murderous psychopath Optimus has officially arrived for the rest of these movies, everyone. Lennox returns and he's at Chernobyl investigating a leak of energon, which just so happens to be a piece of the ship from the moon. Shockwave and his robot sandworm show up and wreck the place looking for the piece, making an absolute mess of the NES team. Luckily, Optimus Prime makes a grand entrance showing off some fancy new upgrades before he tells them to go on and get. When they get back to their base, the new character Mering, the Director of National Intelligence, shows up. Optimus is pissed because the humans lied about what they knew of Transformers because they didn't share about the ship sooner. Mering shares with them that the space race was in order to get to the alien ship on the moon, and that after they got everything they needed, they stopped going back. Turns out they missed the giant floor safe and the super important contents inside, so Optimus goes to take a look. I also think it's super funny that during the history lesson, fucking Buzz Aldrin shows up and has a conversation with Optimus Prime. I was kind of hoping he'd punch someone in the face, since that's the other thing he's known for besides the moon stuff, but sadly he does not. On the Autobot ship, they retrieve these devices known as the Pillars, and also the body of Sentinel Prime. During all the fun Autobot stuff, Sam has ended up getting a job for John Malkovich working in his mailroom. He then goes to see Carly at her job, and turns out she works for super rich car collector Patrick Dempsey. He's playing Dylan, and he sucks. Because not only does he openly flirt and hit on Carly in front of Sam, but he's clearly a bad guy. Like, they don't even try to hide the fact that this guy is definitely up to something. You can just smell it.
A smelly smell that smells smelly.
The next day at his new job, Chang from Community traps Sam in a bathroom stall in order to bring him into the plot. Chang tells him what's up and gives him his manifesto, which outlines everything. Shortly after this encounter, he's seen falling out a window, plunging to his death. Turns out Shockwave not only has a giant sandworm, but he also has a robot bird, and that bird keeps killing everyone who's involved with a super secret cover-up. So after almost getting killed by the bird as well, Sam goes to the Autobots HQ to let them know what's been going on. When he gets there, Optimus Prime is in the middle of using the Matrix of Leadership to bring Sentinel Prime back online. Sentinel immediately asks about the pillars, and he is devastated when he learns that they only saved 5 and the control pillar out of the hundreds he had on board. Sam explains everything he knows to Mering, but because she's a meanie, she dismisses him as a messenger and kicks him out because she's in charge now. Taking matters into his own hands, Sam calls the one and only person who can help him. Could it be Anthony Anderson from the first movie? Sidekick Leo from the second movie? Or Sam's friend that climbed a tree that one time? Maybe it's even Galloway, who they pushed out of the plane in the last one. Nope, it's Agent Simmons. Simmons is now mega rich from writing a best-selling novel, and also has this personal assistant named Dutch, played by Alan Tudyk.
I went to Juilliard.
Because Dutch has skills in everything, he discovers that the Soviets actually canceled a mission to the moon in the 1960s. This leads them to a Russian bar where Dutch has a pretty good joke.
Barishnikov.
We do speak English.
Dutch, you suck.
It's a Cyrillic alphabet. It's like all the buttons you never push on a calculator.
An awkward standoff takes place, and Dutch goes John Wick on everyone for a second before they decide to have a calm conversation instead. The Russians have photos of all the missing pillars on the moon being taken by Decepticons before the Americans got there. So the first big twist with this plot is that the Decepticons the entire time were using humans to cover up the alien spaceship on the moon so no one would know they took the pillars. But if the Decepticons knew about the spaceship on the moon, then they had to know that the cube was there and Megatron went looking for it, right? So why didn't they go rescue Megatron or go looking for the cube, which was the original mission, or the other energon source, which was also the original mission, but instead they just got the pillars and then laid low for like 60 years? Turns out they were waiting for the Autobots to arrive on Earth so they would revive Sentinel Prime because he was the final key they needed, even though they had a piece of the shard, and if they knew he was on the ship, they could have just revived him in the last movie, but instead they just did it in this movie with something else.
I'm extremely confused. You're confused? I'm fucking confused, bro.
Sam calls Lennox and tells him everything he's learned so they can keep Sentinel safe from the Decepticons. We get to see a scene from Michael Bay's movie The Island get reused in this highway chase. And I'm also pretty sure this is the action scene that injured the extra on set. She was in a car when a tow cable snapped and went through her windshield, which gave her severe injuries, and in the end she was awarded $18.5 million in the settlement. Super tragic and very sad. Now we get the second twist in this movie. Sentinel Prime is actually a bad guy. Turns out he too employed Megatron, but in this case to rally with him on Earth with the Pillars. But I guess Megatron forgot to tell his massive army not to shoot his ship down. So Sentinel was just waiting on the moon, and then years later, Megatron went to Earth to look for the cube, and also the Energon source for the Fallen. Man, Megatron really had 3 side quests all at the same time. Sentinel then kills Ironhide, not Ironhide, that lovable truck that's sometimes in the background. You will be missed. Sentinel gets the pillars and activates them in the middle of Washington, D.C., allowing a bunch of Decepticons that were taking a nap on the moon to wake up and invade Earth. All the pillars do is act as a teleportation device because the master plan all along to save Cybertron was to teleport Cybertron to Earth and use humans as slave labor. Sam, on the other hand, has been having some relationship issues. Because he chose to work with Simmons instead of going to Dylan's party, she basically dumps him. So after everything goes down with Sentinel, he rushes off to win her back. Dylan takes Carly hostage and forces Sam to spy on the Autobots and learn of their plan to fight back now that the Decepticons are rallying on Earth. The way that Dylan is written continues to further my point about Michael Bay not knowing how to write villains. Turns out his financial firm has been helping the Decepticons cover up the ship on the moon. And so the way that Dylan helps them is by hiring Sam's girlfriend so they can use her to force Sam to spy on the Autobots' plan. That's really dumb because the Decepticons literally have a guy on their team that is attached to a US satellite. They couldn't use any other method than this complicated human villain side plot in order to find out if the Autobots were gonna fight back.
That's just stupid.
America points the blame to Optimus about Sentinel stealing the pillars and forces the Autobots to leave Earth. Epps makes a return as he's retired from robots shooting at him and now works for NASA alongside the Wreckers. The Wreckers are NASCAR transformers that built the spaceship that's taking the Autobots off the planet. In order to get Carly back, Sam asks Optimus what their plan is, but Optimus simply says that they have no plan and he walks away. Bumblebee has to say goodbye to Sam, and I find this scene extremely funny upon rewatch. This is shown to us as a deeply emotional moment between these two best friends. But like, we barely see B and Sam together, and if their relationship is so special, why does B never mention him or talk about him in the next 2 movies? The Autobot ship takes off and Starscream ends up blowing it up, leading everyone to believe that they're dead forever. We then smash cut to the Decepticons obliterating Chicago as a massive attack is taking place. Epps rounds up some of his old Nest buddies and they dramatically drive to the city. Seeing the carnage and destruction when they arrive, Epps tells Sam there's no way they can find Carly in all of that. But Sam, not wanting to lose his last chance at a romantic ending, says he's going in anyway. An airship starts to attack them and then boom, all the Autobots show up to save the day. Optimus needed everyone to believe they were dead so they could come back and use the element of surprise. That would have been a great plan. Too bad they immediately ruined that by taking the crashed airship and flying it to rescue Carly. They succeed, but a drone flies in front of the ship and gets sucked into the engine, causing them to crash and alerting everyone to their presence so the third act action battle can kick off. I remembered the final act in this one being somewhat good, but it ends up being a letdown to what at the time was the finale in this series. Using the crashed military drone, Epps and Sam get a message to Linux about how they need to knock out the control pillar to stop Cybertron from coming to Earth. While they wait for Linux to arrive, they decide to head to a nearby building to try and take out the control pillar themselves with a rocket. Linux mobilizes his team and we are treated to a pretty cool sequence of Ospreys crashing while the team jumps out. They use freaking wingsuits to land in the city and thread the needle through a building while doing so. Linux is the true hero of this franchise. Prove me wrong. Back in Sam's building, the robot Sandworm is back and makes the building start to collapse. Optimus shows up in his wingsuit and kills the robot worm, and then he gets tangled in some cranes. It's so hard to take Optimus Prime seriously in these movies because he might be the biggest idiot out of everyone. They end up getting out of the collapsing building, but Sam gets separated as Starscream shows up. Somehow Sam fairly easily kills Starscream by exploding his head, which is a wild choice as this is one of the only recurring Decepticons, and this is how he goes out? When I saw this in theaters, I fully expected it to be a rematch between Bumblebee and Starscream because Starscream blew up Bumblebee's legs in the first movie, but instead it's just Sam in a very lackluster way. So then the Decepticons end up capturing all the Autobots and then execute this one named Q. He has maybe 3 lines in this entire movie, and I honestly forgot he was even in this. Optimus finally frees himself from the cranes, and the Autobots start to take out the bad guys, and in the end, Sam kills Dylan, Bumblebee kills Shockwave, Optimus kills Sentinel, and then Optimus kills Megatron. All of these movies end the same way, with Optimus giving a speech and everyone standing around him. The end. Oh, I just realized I never mentioned Megatron in this one except for when he dies. That would be because when I was writing this, I forgot he was in it because he literally plays 0 part again. He mopes around for the first 2 acts in Africa, and then Carly baits him into fighting because of pride or something. God, he's so wasted in these movies, it hurts. I do think that Leonard Nimoy as Sentinel Prime was a great choice. His voice is always a treat. I like how Sentinel Prime was Optimus Prime's mentor. That adds a nice layer to their final showdown. And with Sentinel as the main villain, you don't even need Megatron in this plotline at all. Hugo Weaving, who you would know from The Matrix as Agent Smith or Red Skull in the first Captain America movie, he's the voice of Megatron, and it's such a shame because he's not utilized right, and this had so much potential. I'm not really surprised that Hugo Weaving didn't want to come back for any further work because it sounds like he didn't have a very good time and didn't enjoy his experience that much either. Also having Rosie Huntington, who by the way, fun fact, is married to Jason Statham, but replacing Megan Fox's Michaela with Carly just isn't the same. She's by no means a bad actress, but she's written really poorly and she's a brand new character that is supposed to have this deep connection with Sam. It just doesn't work as we only get parts of one movie to believe this relationship, as we had 2 whole movies to believe Sam's relationship with Michaela. This also concludes Sam's story, and I still can't figure out what part he plays in this. In the first movie, he's 100% just a passenger who runs around with a cube and kills Megatron by accident. In the second one, he just believes really hard in bringing Optimus back to life, and even though it works, we also did see the Decepticons bring Megatron back with a piece of the cube, which Sam easily could have done instead of going on this whole journey to find the Matrix of Leadership. And in this one, nobody wants him involved, so he just contacts Simmons, who ends up doing all of the heavy lifting anyways. Sam could have been involved because Lennox needed his help, and the whole Carly side plot and pointless Patrick Dempsey bad guy can just all go away. The send-off for Sam could have been him maturing and finally finding his purpose and his role with the Autobots. Instead, Sam does pretty much nothing except mooch off Simmons and just gets the girl back. Again, the same thing he got in the last 2 movies. He has no real character growth, and his reward at the end of all of these movies is always the same thing. Just a kiss on the lips and a happy ending. But then by the next one, his happy ending is gone. It also sucks that all the Autobots basically change movie to movie with the exception of Bumblebee and Optimus. What's worse is we do get more Autobots and their personalities in the next 2 movies, and it's awful. They act like little children and are the furthest thing from likable. The brand is literally called Transformers, but Autobots and Decepticons both feel like C players in their own stories. So with all of that, are you ready for the Marky Mark experience?
Welcome to hell, motherfucker!
The movie opens with a flashback, and once again we learn that Transformers came to Earth long before we knew it. This concept has changed every single movie, and now it's as far back as dinosaurs. We are then introduced to Cade Yeager and his idiot friend, Lucas. Cade is a self-proclaimed inventor and employs his friend Lucas as his helper. We meet them as they're looking through an old theater for anything that Cade can use to invent more things, and in the middle of this theater, there's just a semi-truck. He makes Lucas buy the truck, and we get a creepy moment where Lucas calls Cade's daughter Tessa hot. Speaking of Tessa, we then cut to her arriving home being all moody about her dad not paying their mortgage. She yells at him some more after he brings home the semi-truck because she wants him to save money so she can go to college. Age of Extinction needs you to know that Cade is a terrible father, so his lackluster redemption arc later will somehow have meaning. Spoiler, it does not. Now, personally, I thought one of the weaker parts of the third movie were the bad humans working with the Decepticons. So Age of Extinction keeps that going, but in a worse way. Turns out the CIA is working with a bounty hunter named Lockdown, but here's where it gets stupid. In a repeat of the last movie's plot, the government now wants all the Transformers off the planet, even though we saw the Transformers save the day, and everyone recognized that at the end of the last movie. So this results in every single Autobot getting killed off screen except Ratchet, who has been in the background since the first movie. He's instantly killed, so all we have left are Bumblebee and Optimus from the original movies. Meanwhile, Cade spent all night looking through his new truck and discovers that it's actually a Transformer. He shows Lucas and Tessa, and Optimus finally transforms, and in good old Optimus fashion, he immediately threatens to kill them all. Because Cade thinks he's an inventor, he believes he can help Optimus and repair him. And after Lucas runs to a hardware store in a small town in Texas, he is able to fully repair this alien robot. Then the new CIA evil human played by Frasier, aka Kelsey Grammer, has his Black Ops group called Cemetery Wind go to Cade's house and get Optimus after learning of his whereabouts. What happens next involves holding a 17-year-old girl at gunpoint, threatening to shoot said 17-year-old girl, and it being revealed that Lucas called the government because he sucks. Optimus transforms and starts laying waste to Cemetery Wind. In the middle of that, we are introduced to rally car driver Shane, who makes his entrance by killing a guy with a tire. Now, Shane is Tessa's boyfriend, and there is so much to unpack with their relationship, but I'm going to wait until I'm done with the plot before I dive into that icky mess. He helps the trio escape, and the Black Ops group follows close behind. Optimus briefly fights Lockdown for a second, and then Lockdown uses this bomb that makes Lucas look like a Terminator, which promptly removes us of Lucas from the rest of this movie. So the remaining human gang goes with Optimus to meet the other Autobots. I hope you're excited to see all of our fan favorite Autobots we've come to know and love, like Bumblebee or Drift, the samurai robot, and Crosshairs. Oh, Crosshairs, you. Oh boy, and Hound. I love Hound and all his houndness. I have no idea who any of these are. After these unlovable rascals are introduced, Cade and Optimus start to put the pieces together about what's going on. Optimus figures out that the CIA has been working with a robots company called KSI. So they make a plan to break in because the CEO Joshua, played by Stanley Tucci, has figured out how to make man-made Transformers. Apparently, the super rare metal the Transformers are made out of is on Earth, and he's gotten his hands on it. He's also gotten a hold of Megatron's head, which is cool. Nothing like a private corporation having alien technology. So part of the deal with Lockdown the humans made is that if they deliver him Optimus Prime, he will give them a device called the Seed. The Seed will terraform any city into the metal that makes Transformers, so America can make their own robots. The humans break into KSI, and Cade learns all these secrets before being caught by Frasier. Doesn't really matter because moments later, all the Autobots break in and rescue Cade while also wrecking the KSI factory. Cade and the Autobots ultimately leave, and because Frasier is bloodthirsty, he authorizes KSI to field test their own Transformers. The two KSI made were Bumblebee knockoff Stinger and Galvatron. Problem with Galvatron is he keeps turning out like Megatron because they're using Megatron's head to make him. Galvatron then attacks Optimus, and someone forgot to tell Michael Bay in editing that this transformation effect, it's not good. They fight for a second before Lockdown shows up and captures Optimus and also Tessa because she was too dumb to run away from two giant robots fighting. Lockdown tells Prime that his makers want him back, and they sent Lockdown there to retrieve Optimus for them. What follows next is a very long scene of Cade and Shane working their way through Lockdown's ship in order to save Tessa and Optimus. In a turn of events that is extremely convenient for the good guys, the prison that is also holding Optimus just so happens to double as a spaceship that the Autobots then use to escape Lockdown's ship. During all of the shenanigans going on with Cade and the others, the US government gets the Seed from Lockdown because they technically held up their end of the deal. Joshua moves all of his Transformers to his China facility, and along the way, he kind of starts to admit that his creation Galvatron is really just Megatron, and he's probably evil. So when Fraser gives Joshua the seed, he backs out and decides not to use it like they originally intended. While this is happening, Galvatron activates himself and takes control over all the Transformers KSI has in the facility. Luckily, Joshua and his assistant escape the attack and Fraser with the seed intact and end up on the roof of a nearby apartment building. Our Autobots arrive to pick him and the seed up just a little too late and end up getting shot down, leaving just Bumblebee and Hound with the humans as the ship goes off to crash. They all take refuge in a tea house while Hound and Bee have a pretty good Final Stand style action scene. John Goodman as Hound is one of the best inclusions in this fourth movie, and that's saying a lot because there's not a lot to choose from. While all this goes down, Optimus and the others crash the spaceship and decide to release some ancient warriors Lockdown had on board. Those ancient warriors turn out to be the Dinobots. The Dinobots were just prisoners on the ship, even though they were on Earth during the prehistoric age. So Optimus and the others ride the Dinobots in and start tearing apart the bad guys, saving Bee and the others. Lockdown finally realizes he no longer has his prisoners and doubles back to where the humans are in China. Using a giant magnet, he starts sucking everything up and dropping it, which I will admit is a pretty cool idea. The ship starts to suck up all the Autobots and Dinobots, but then someone shoots a rocket into the ship and stops the magnet. Bumblebee takes Tessa and Shane away from the fighting, and Optimus goes to fight Lockdown. Cade runs off to help Optimus, but Fraser is also there, and he ambushes Cade, holding him at gunpoint. I find it hilarious that in the middle of his fight with Lockdown, Optimus goes out of his way to fry Fraser like a fish. And then using the power of friendship, everyone helps Optimus fight Lockdown until he splits him like a coconut. Then I am not kidding you, this movie jumps to everyone standing by the water, Optimus giving a speech, and then he says he's going to find his creators. So he just blasts off into outer space and pieces the fuck out as the movie ends. I'm not gonna waste any time, we're gonna talk about the worst, weirdest, creepiest, and just downright disgusting inclusion to this fourth movie. Tessa is 17, but she's dating 20-year-old Shane, and even though the age gap is illegal, there is a Romeo and Juliet law in the state of Texas that allows them to date legally because they had a relationship back when Tessa was 14 and Shane was 17.
Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
So instead of just writing Tessa as an 18-year-old, making Shane also 17, or just doing anything else, this movie decides to take a very bad stance on inappropriate relationships. To further prove my point about how overly sexualized this 17-year-old is, take the scene where we're introduced to her for the first time. She has a shirt tied around her waist. Then when we go to the next shot, the shirt is now over her shoulder, exposing her shorts. And I wouldn't even point this out if it weren't for the fact that 5 minutes later, the movie then points out how short those shorts are.
Sweetheart, your shorts are shrinking by the second, okay? Cold water, air dry, please.
The writers of this movie need to be on a list, and we need to check it twice. And look, I get that in real life Nicola Peltz was older than 17, but that doesn't mean you should write this character this way. Let alone include things that do nothing for the plot in order to add a shock value that's more gross than anything else. And if this was meant to be funny, then you all deserve jail. Oh, and Mark Wahlberg sucks.
What? No.
Cade Yeager, the replacement for Sam Witwicky, is a terrible person and a giant idiot.
Stay prayed up.
I mean, I know I complained a lot about Sam in the first 3 movies, but Cade Yeager is worse somehow. Margie Boy just doesn't do a great job in the acting department, and that, with the poorly written script, results in moments like this.
You better have insurance.
Insurance? It's a freaking spaceship. You go get insurance on a freaking spaceship. Good luck with that, buddy.
And that is made even worse when you put him on screen with Nicola Peltz, who, I'm sorry, is just a bad actress. I mean, it makes sense. She's a Nepo baby. She's the daughter of Nelson Peltz. Nelson Peltz is a mega billionaire who has had run-ins with Disney when he questioned their leadership. Also, he swayed the producers of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yeah, that Avatar: The Last Airbender. But he is the reason she was cast, and that led to the whitewashed cast. 2 thumbs down. She sucks. I might be in the minority here, but I miss the military subplots from the first 3 movies, because those people felt fun. Instead, Age of Extinction focuses on the worst set of human characters these movies have ever seen, while also deciding everything from the last 3 movies doesn't matter. And is 100% the same timeline because they reference the Battle of Chicago and other events from the first 2 movies. But everything the Autobots did doesn't matter and the government doesn't care all of a sudden. At least they tried something new with having humans create their own Transformers. But come on. The name of the metal that creates the Transformers is Transformium. That's the best name you could come up with for metal that makes Transformers? Transformium? This is unobtainium all over again. It's also become very obvious that Michael Bay has no idea how to use Optimus Prime. Optimus is very rarely directly involved with any of the events that are happening, or he spends a majority of the movie off screen. Like having him just blast off into space because he wants to find his creators? I sure hope he doesn't get frozen. Well, he got frozen. Also, the aspect ratio of this movie changes throughout and it's super distracting, so I apologize in advance for that one. The Last Knight then treats us to a flashback 1600 years ago as King Arthur and his knights fight an invading army. He has sent mythical wizard Merlin. Hey, wait a fucking minute. That's Stanley Tucci. I wonder if this will be connected to his character from the last movie. In a voiceover from Anthony Hopkins, he tells us that magic has always existed. It just wasn't really magic, it was a crashed alien ship, so not magic at all. Just aliens. But Merlin ends up meeting with some ancient Transformers who give him a staff that controls them when they are in their dragon form. This turns the tables of the war and King Arthur ends up winning and Merlin with the staff are hidden from everyone. In more voiceover from Anthony Hopkins and an appearance from John Turturro, we learn that Transformers keep coming to Earth and no one can figure out why. We then hard cut to a bunch of kids breaking into a restricted area in Chicago before a bunch of military bots find them. A mysterious girl named Isabel shows up and she saves them with her tiny robot friend. So now there is this new Transformer hunting task force called TRF, and they end up spotting the kids in the restricted area. They blow up one of Isabel's Transformer friends, and then Cade Yeager just shows up and saves them with Bumblebee. After the kids leave, Cade goes to help a Transformer in a ship, and that Transformer gives him a medallion that will become the biggest movie MacGuffin in this whole franchise. So Cade and Bee try to make their escape, but get caught by the TRF, and Lennox makes his grand return. He's finally here to save the franchise, guys. I can feel it. Spoiler alert, he does not save the franchise. I'll give The Last Knight credit for including this really cool sequence of Bumblebee putting himself back together and taking out more guys in the process. Lennox ultimately lets them go, but also shoots Bee with a tracker. The police car from the first movie shows up and has a conversation with Megatron about where the staff might be. Yeah, Galvatron from the last movie is just straight up Megatron now. I guess the writers just kind of gave up at this point because he even looks completely different. We finally cut back to Optimus Prime floating in space before he lands on Cybertron. He gets his wish and meets his creator, who is Quintessa, the prime of life. So definitely not the cube from the first one like we were told. Got it. She brainwashes Optimus and tells him that the staff is actually hers, and it turns out the ancient knights who took it were actually betraying her because they didn't like her very much. So she takes Optimus and Cybertron and makes her way to Earth. Immediately after that, we meet Anthony Hopkins' character, and he also has a robot butler named Cogman, and he is very sassy.
Kindly come with me.
Hey, Kate, what's with the C-3PO ripoff?
Don't kill the messenger, or the messenger will kill you.
Anthony Hopkins is playing Edmund Burton, and he is a part of a secret society that has been working with Transformers for centuries. We then meet Vivian, an Oxford professor who's giving a tour about King Arthur, saying that all of it was bullshit and none of them existed. Edmund is also there, and after spying on her, he leaves and tells Cogman that she's the one. Cutting back to Cade, he goes back to the Autobot junkyard hideout where all the Transformers act like little kids once again. Everyone regroups and it turns out Isabel stored away back to the hideout. Then the movie continues to introduce us to new characters as Jimmy, the comic relief character, yells at everyone before the T-Rex dinosaur throws up a police car. This movie refuses to slow down and has a breakneck pace, and I think it's intentional to hide how crazy this plot is. Because then a junkyard salesman shows up and drops a Starscream cameo in the form of his severed head. He tells everyone that the medallion is a sign of the end of the world, and if it was real, that everyone should peace out and get off the planet. After that, Isabel yells at Cade, telling him that she doesn't have a home because her family was killed during the Battle of Chicago. Ultimately, her sob story wins Cade over, and he agrees to let her stay and join the team. Meanwhile, all across Earth, these horns have started to pop out of the planet, and Edmund says that they're a sign that Cybertron is coming. Cade's daughter then tells him over the phone that he doesn't need to save the world, he needs to get a freaking girlfriend. I hate this, everyone. Just so I'm clear, I hate this. Back with Linux, he makes a deal with Megatron to do a prisoner exchange because Megatron captured humans. These do not even remotely feel like any of the same characters we knew in any previous movie. Megatron names off a bunch of Decepticons in a very Suicide Squad style fashion. Each one has a song and a freeze frame title card before a flashback with a character telling us how bad they are.
Redbot, in for bank robbery. Aggravated assault, murder, double murder, triple murder, 9 dead. Didn't even take the money. No.
The military gives the Decepticons Cade's location and tracks what's going on with TRF on standby. The Decepticons attack Cade's camp and Hound stays back to buy everyone time, and then he just disappears for a really long time. In a sneak attack, the Dinobots ambush the TRF forces, so they resort to using drones to go after Cade instead. Because then the Autobots make the Decepticons retreat by killing most of the newly introduced Decepticons the movie just made a big deal about. A drone then knocks Cade out of a window, and he performs some insane leapfrog to take the control drone down, which takes all the other drones down as well. Cade agrees to go with Cogman to England so we can leave Isabel and Jimmy, as well as the rest of the Autobots, out of the plot for a little bit. Quintessa shows up to tell us that Earth is actually Unicron, who is Cybertron's nemesis, and Optimus's other quest is to destroy Unicron, aka destroying Earth. Vivian is also connected to the plot because her dead dad was obsessed with the legend of King Arthur, and she's also special. And so Edmund uses a Transformer car to kidnap Vivian and bring her to the castle. Right before she gets there, Cade gets to meet him, and Edmund sounds like an absolute crazy person. But then we also get this delightful delivery from Anthony Hopkins.
Look, old timer, I don't have a ton of patience for riddles right now.
Yes, but you want to know, don't you, dude?
After that, Vivian shows up and Edmund does some more lore dumping. He's the last surviving member of an ancient society known as Witwickens, and we see a cameo of Shia LaBeouf's character from the first 3. As well as the watch that apparently killed Hitler. He continues by telling the duo that Transformers have been on Earth for years and years, and Bumblebee even helped in World War II. He just doesn't remember, I guess. It so happens that the way that Vivian is special is by being a descendant of Merlin, which means she can activate the staff. In addition to that, Cade is special because he's the last knight to be chosen by the medallion to help save the end of the world. Wow, this movie really tries hard. Randomly, the TRF shows up at Edmund's castle, and this one Autobot just freezes time. So Vivian and Cade escape to go to her father's office, where they find the location of the staff hidden in her childhood book. That's not before Mark Wahlberg says this out-of-pocket line.
Look at this little fake horse. Probably stuffed in its butt or something. Guys do stupid stuff like that.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Cade and Vivian end up at a submarine and go with Cogman down to the staff, while Edmund goes on a side quest to Stonehenge to fulfill his destiny. The submarine Cade and them are in is actually a Transformer, and it takes them to an underwater spaceship that has Merlin's coffin. The sub arrives at the underwater ship, and they are followed by Linux and a small team. Before Vivian can get her hands on the staff, an old Transformer wakes up and starts attacking everyone. When Vivian does finally get her hands on the staff, it activates the ship, and they start to rise out of the water. More of these ancient Transformers wake up, and lucky for us, Optimus Prime makes his grand entrance. He instantly starts threatening death to everyone if they refuse to give over the staff, which Cade and Vivian ultimately do. Optimus walks away so B and Cade can go after him, while Vivian and Linux escape off the ship. Bumblebee and Optimus fight for like 2 seconds, but because of more bad writing, Bumblebee can suddenly talk in his real voice, which snaps Optimus out of his mind control. This movie was marketed as having Optimus as the bad guy, but he shows up and in less than 5 minutes in the movie, he's back to being a good guy. So realistically, Michael Bay just wrote a plot to not involve Optimus Prime until the very end. Megatron shows up to steal the staff from Optimus and then flies off to deliver it to Quintessa. The 12 Ancient Knights say they're going to kill Optimus for betraying his own kind, so Cade becomes Autobot Jesus and saves the day. Megatron takes the staff to Stonehenge, and the ship that had Merlin's body is the key or something. So Edmund shows up at Stonehenge and just shoots at Megatron with a cane gun, and then he gets blown up. That was his destiny, to shoot at Megatron briefly and then die. Isabel and Jimmy re-enter the movie with the rest of the Autobots by showing up in their ship. The big plan is to put the military in Ospreys, put those Ospreys in the Autobot ship, and then fly it up to where Quintessa is so they can stop her. Quintessa's big plan is to drain Earth of its energy so she can use that energy to rebuild Cybertron. The Osprey scene is the one and only thing that I can truly say I like in this movie. Again, maybe it's my tiny Marine Corps brain, but there's something about the crash landing that leads into a battlefield full of carnage that I just absolutely love. Too bad it only lasts a couple of minutes before the military peeps are told to evacuate because the government has a better plan. They decide to use tactical nukes to blow the command room off of Cybertron to stop it from draining Earth. So only the Autobots with Cade and Vivian go off to stop Quintessa with the power of friendship. I already made that joke once, but it still fits. Optimus kills Megatron again, which I think makes it the third time he's done that. And lucky for everyone, Vivian is able to grab onto the staff, and by the time it's all over, the day is saved. I need to also point out this bad line from Bumblebee after he shoots Quintessa.
Sting like a bee.
What? You're just ruining it. Look at my lips, you're ruining it.
Everyone does another circle celebration in slow motion while Optimus Prime gives a speech. Even though Cybertron is still on Earth, and that would actually be a huge disaster, did no one watch the movie Moonfall? Then it just hard cuts to credits. The end. I don't even know anymore, man. This is easily the worst one, and is largely due to its breakneck pace and overly convoluted plot. A majority of this story is just lore and exposition dumping, and none of it pays off. If my summary sounded confusing, it's because the whole fucking movie is confusing. Like, I know the last one's moved pretty quickly, but this one just feels all over the place. Like, why is there a dragon made up of Transformers that can be controlled by a staff? If these Transformers can act on their own when they're not in dragon mode, why would they all of a sudden need to listen to a staff when they are? Because they make a big deal to say that only the wielder of Merlin's staff can control the dragon. But in the final fight in this one, the dragon just starts helping and nobody is controlling the staff. So none of it makes any sense. I truly feel like this was originally a script for a movie about King Arthur and Merlin, and then Michael Bay got his hands on it and added Transformers. Because this feels like the least Transformers movie out of all of them. Earth being Unicron was hands down the stupidest decision they made in this franchise. It makes zero sense and apparently doesn't matter, so I guess everyone is just going to hope Unicron doesn't transform and throw everyone into space. And I just gotta say, having Merlin be played by Stanley Tucci, but not using Stanley Tucci's character from the last one is really dumb. And not to mention the fact that Optimus spends most of his time off screen or being a bad guy for no reason, since everything is resolved within 5 minutes when he does show up. I like Jimmy. I wish he was in this more, because he was actually funny and is the only human character other than Isabella who doesn't seem like they suck. I know it shouldn't, but it bothers me how many things this movie introduces and then leaves open and unresolved at the end. Like, what happened to the Dinobots after they ambushed TRF? Because we never see them again after that. Where did the dragon go that was at the center of this story with the staff? This is literally the last scene of the movie it's in, and then it's just gone. This whole series is overly inflated with lore that by the end of the movie you're watching, it never really mattered at all. When I had to watch this the second time, I made my podcast co-host Kevin watch it, and he fell asleep for 15 minutes. So I think that pretty much summarizes The Last Night perfectly. Okay, I've mentioned on it throughout this video, but the continuity is so broken that I think it's worse than the Fox X-Men timeline, and that shit is broken. So I just wanted to quickly point out all the continuity breaks that I saw and list them here. In Revenge of the Fallen, Sam starts to see symbols after touching a piece of the cube. But in the first movie, he runs around holding it and nothing happens to him. Also, a piece of the cube is what brings Megatron back to life, but Sam pushing it into his chest killed him, so how does that work? And if they had a piece of the cube, they could have easily brought Optimus back without having to go look for the Matrix of Leadership in the first place. I also mentioned it briefly, but if Sentinel Prime was working with Megatron in Dark of the Moon, why did Megatron not tell his army to not shoot his ship down? Also, Sentinel Prime doesn't accept the Matrix of Leadership when it's offered to him by Optimus Prime, even though he was a bad guy and that would have greatly benefited him. In Age of Extinction, we learned that the poorly named element Transformium made Transformers, but in the first movie, we were told it all came from the cube. Then in the fifth movie, neither of those really matter because Quintessa actually made them all. Clearly, Michael Bay and the writers did not put a lot of thought into how any of these connect, which is disappointing because there could have been something here. Overall, these movies are full of nonsense, bad writing, and over-the-top action. And those are things that I typically really love, but in the Transformers franchise, not so much. There's not a lot of redeeming moments, as most of these movies are filled with some pretty big issues. From sexualizing every single woman on screen to an exhausting amount, or having an entire scene dedicated just to justify an underage relationship, all the way to the pee jokes and dogs humping. This franchise wasn't nearly as fun as I remembered or hoped for, and that's a little bit of a bummer. Recently, it was announced that a G.I. Joe and Transformer crossover is in the works, which could be interesting. We got the new animated movie that looks mostly fine, but the best thing we've ever gotten is the first 10 minutes of Bumblebee. This opening having accurate-looking Transformers and Bumblebee speaking in a regular voice is done so well. It perfectly showcases the last day of the war on Cybertron before Bumblebee makes his escape to Earth. I love it, and I wish we could get something more like this in a full-length movie, but time will tell. I need to nap and lay down on the other hand, so with everything considered, the 5 Michael Bay Transformers go right into just plain garbage. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this, don't forget to check out my video on the B movie, another just plain garbage, in my opinion. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below what movie you'd like to see me cover in the future.